Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the UES Liberty, watching the stars through the main window. 3 months had passed since they left Earth on humanity's first mission to meet alien governments. The ship carried 200 humans into deep space, farther than any human had ever traveled before. "Captain, we have contact," said Amy Harrison from her position at the communications desk. "It's an alien ship, just like the Council told us to expect." Jake nodded and straightened his uniform. This was the moment they had all been waiting for. After years of radio signals back and forth, humans were finally going to meet aliens face to face. The Galactic Council had agreed to let humanity join their group of 12 alien species, but first, they had to complete this diplomatic mission. "Tell Lisa to get ready," Jake said. "This is her show now." Lisa Campbell was Earth's best diplomat. She had spent months learning about alien cultures and languages. She walked onto the bridge wearing her formal blue diplomatic uniform, looking calm and professional. Behind her came Ryan Torres, the ship's security chief, and Dr. Nathan Brooks, their science officer. The alien ship appeared on their screens. It was long and sleek, made of some kind of silver metal that seemed to glow in the starlight. It was much larger than the Liberty and looked more advanced than anything humans had ever built. "They're sending a message," Amy said. "It's in Galactic Standard Language." "Put it on screen," Jake ordered. The main screen flickered and showed the face of an alien. It had blue skin, large black eyes, and a mouth full of sharp teeth. When it spoke, the translation computer changed its words into English. "Greetings, humans. I am Ambassador Vextar of the Zelthani people. We welcome you to this meeting. Please prepare to receive our diplomatic party." Lisa stepped forward. "This is Chief Diplomat Lisa Campbell, representing Earth and humanity. We are honored to meet you, Ambassador Vextar. We accept your request to come aboard." "Excellent," the alien replied. "We shall dock with your ship in 1 hour. Prepare your formal greeting chamber." The screen went dark. Everyone on the bridge looked excited but nervous. This was really happening. Humans were about to host their first alien visitors. "Ryan, I want full security protocols," Jake said. "But keep it friendly. These are supposed to be our new allies." Ryan nodded. "Yes, sir. I'll have teams ready, but they'll stay out of sight." 1 hour later, Jake and Lisa waited in the ship's main meeting room. The walls were decorated with pictures of Earth and samples of human art. They wanted to make a good first impression on their alien guests. The airlock doors opened with a soft hiss. Ambassador Vextar entered first, followed by 4 other Zelthani aliens. They all wore long robes covered in strange symbols. The ambassador carried a small device that glowed with soft blue light. "Welcome aboard the UES Liberty," Lisa said with a formal bow. "We are pleased to host representatives of the Galactic Council." Ambassador Vextar returned the bow. "The honor is ours, Diplomat Campbell. We have traveled far to meet the newest species seeking to join our galactic community." The formal greetings continued for several minutes. Both sides exchanged gifts and spoke about hopes for peaceful cooperation between their peoples. Jake began to relax. The aliens seemed friendly, and the meeting was going well. Then everything changed. One of the other Zelthani suddenly stepped forward. Unlike the ambassador, this alien wore black clothing and carried weapons. "Enough of this pretense," he said in a harsh voice. Ambassador Vextar looked shocked. "Commander Crixtel, what are you doing?" The black-clothed alien pointed a strange weapon at the ambassador. "Silence, fool. Your usefulness is over." More armed aliens poured into the room from the airlock. They were not wearing diplomatic robes but military armor. Their weapons were pointed at the humans. "What is the meaning of this?" Lisa demanded. Commander Crixtel laughed. It was an ugly sound. "The meaning, human, is that you have walked into a trap. We are not here for diplomacy. We are here to give you a choice." Jake reached for his communication device but stopped when several weapons turned toward him. "Who are you? What do you want?" "We are the Crimson Void," Crixtel replied. "We control this sector of space. No new species joins the Galactic Council without our permission." Ryan Torres appeared in the doorway with two security guards, but they were quickly surrounded by more armed aliens. The humans were outnumbered and outgunned. You see, Crixtel continued, the galaxy works in a very simple way. Species that want to survive learn to negotiate with us. Those that don't suffer consequences. The commander activated a device on his wrist. A holographic display appeared in the air, showing images of 3 human colonies: New Geneva, Port Hope, and Freedom Station. Thousands of people lived on these worlds. These are your colonies, yes? Crixtel asked. Pretty little. Worlds full of innocent humans. It would be a shame if something happened to them. Lisa's face went pale. You're threatening civilians, that's terrorism. I prefer to call it business, the alien replied. Here is how this works. You will surrender your ship and crew to us. You will return to Earth and tell your government that humans are not welcome. In the Galactic Council. If you refuse, we will destroy your 3 colonies. Every man, woman, and child will die. Ambassador Vextar struggled against the aliens holding him. This is not council policy. We came here in peace. Crixtel struck the ambassador with the back of his hand. Your council is weak, old fool. They talk and talk while we take action. This is how the galaxy really works. Jake felt anger rising in his chest, but he kept his voice steady. How long do we have to decide? 72 hours, Crixtel said. That should be enough time for you to understand your situation. Other species usually see reason much faster. Lisa stepped forward. There must be another way. We can negotiate. Perhaps we can find a solution that works for everyone. The terrorist? Commander laughed again. You can try, human diplomat. Every species tries to negotiate at first. They offer us money, territory, resources. Some offer us complete surrender. In the end, they all give us what we want because the alternative is too terrible to accept. He gestured to his soldiers, who began setting up equipment in the meeting room. We will remain here to ensure you don't try anything foolish. Use your time wisely. Think about all those innocent people on your colonies. Think about their children. Jake looked at the display showing the human colonies. Families were going about their daily lives, unaware that terrorists were threatening to murder them all. His jaw tightened as he made his decision. Commander, Crixtel, Jake said in a calm voice. Yes, human. I want to make sure I understand your offer correctly. You want us to surrender our ship, abandon our mission, and tell Earth that humans can't join the Galactic Council. In exchange, you won't attack our colonies. Exactly. Very simple. Jake nodded slowly. And if we refuse, then 50,000 humans will die, starting with the children. The bridge fell silent except for the hum of ship systems. Everyone waited to see how the human captain would respond to the terrorist threat. Jake looked directly into Commander Crixtel's alien eyes. Then I have something very important to tell you about humans, Commander. Oh? And what is that? We don't negotiate with terrorists. The alien's expression changed from confident amusement to confusion. What did you say? You heard me correctly. Humans have a very simple policy regarding terrorism. We don't negotiate with murderers, and we don't make deals with those who threaten innocent people. Commander Crixtel blinked his large black eyes. You don't understand the situation, human. I am offering you a chance to save lives. No, Jake replied firmly. You're offering to murder innocent people if we don't give you what you want. That's called terrorism. And humans learned long ago that giving in to terrorists only encourages more terrorism. The room fell completely silent. Even Ambassador Vextar stared at the human captain in amazement. Throughout galactic history, no species had ever refused to negotiate when faced with such threats. Commander Crixtel stared at Captain Jake Morrison for a long moment. The alien's black eyes showed confusion and disbelief. In all his years leading terrorist operations, no species had ever refused to negotiate when innocent lives were at stake. You are making a mistake, human, Crixtel said slowly. Perhaps you do not understand what I am offering you. Jake crossed his arms and remained calm. I understand perfectly. You want to murder innocent people if we don't surrender to your demands? The answer is no. The terrorist commander turned to his soldiers and spoke in his own language. They seemed just as confused as their leader. One of them stepped forward and whispered something in Crixtel's ear. My lieutenant reminds me that you have 72 hours to reconsider, Crixtel said. Other species have used this time to find creative solutions. The Valdorians offered us 3 mining worlds. The Centaxi gave us complete control of their military fleet. What will humans offer? Lisa Campbell spoke up from where she stood. We already told you, we don't negotiate with terrorists. That means we don't offer you anything. Ambassador Vextar, still held by alien guards, looked amazed. Captain Morrison, surely you must consider the lives of your colonists. There are children on those worlds. Jake turned to the Zelthani ambassador. Ambassador, I understand your concern. But humans learned something important during our history. When you give in to terrorists once, they come back and demand more. If we surrender now, how long before they threaten other human colonies? How long before they control everything? We do? Dr. Nathan Brooks had been quietly studying the terrorist equipment with his eyes. He stepped closer to Jake and spoke in a low voice. Captain, their energy readings are interesting. That's not standard Zelthani technology. Jake nodded slightly but kept his attention on Crixtel. Commander, you have our answer. Now I have something to tell you. What is that, foolish human? You have exactly 1 chance to release your hostages and leave this ship. After that, we implement Protocol 7. Several of the terrorist soldiers shifted nervously. They had never heard of Protocol 7, but something in the human captain's voice made them uncomfortable. Crixtel laughed, but it sounded forced. Protocol 7? What is this human nonsense? You'll find out, Jake said simply. Amy Harrison had been quietly working at her communication station throughout the confrontation. She caught Jake's eye and nodded slightly. The message was clear. She had managed to send word to Earth about their situation. The next few hours passed slowly. The terrorists set up guard positions throughout the ship, but they seemed unsure of themselves. They were used to species that spent this time frantically trying to negotiate better terms or find alternative solutions. Instead, the humans went about their normal duties. Ryan Torres moved through the ship, checking on crew members and making sure everyone understood the situation. Dr. Brooks continued his analysis of the terrorist equipment, making careful notes about energy signatures and technology types. Lisa Campbell spent time talking with Ambassador Vextar when the guards allowed it. She learned more about how the Crimson Void operated throughout the galaxy. They have done this to dozens of species, the ambassador explained quietly. Always the same pattern. They threaten innocent lives and demand submission. Most governments find it easier to give them what they want rather than fight. What happens to species that resist? Lisa asked. Vextar's blue skin grew darker. Few have tried. Those that did suffered terrible losses before eventually surrendering. The Crimson Void has resources and weapons that individual planets cannot match. Have any species ever completely refused to negotiate? The ambassador thought for a moment. Not in my lifetime. The cost is always considered too high. Meanwhile, Jake called a private meeting with his senior officers in a storage room, away from terrorist surveillance. Ryan Torres and Dr. Brooks joined him there. Report, Jake said quietly. The crew is holding up well, Ryan said. Everyone understands the situation. No one is suggesting we should surrender. Dr. Brooks opened his scanning device. Captain, I've been analyzing their equipment. This technology comes from at least 4 different council species. Either they've been buying from multiple sources or they have support from legitimate governments. Jake frowned. That's troubling. What about their ship? It's definitely more advanced than ours, but not by as much as I first thought. Their weapons are powerful, but their shields have weak points. If we had backup. He left the sentence unfinished. We might, Jake said. Amy got a message through to Earth before they blocked our communications. Help should be coming. Ryan leaned forward. How long do we wait? Until the deadline, Jake replied. We give them every chance to do the right thing, but if they don't release the hostages and withdraw, he didn't need to finish. Both men understood. Back in the main meeting room, Commander Crixtel was growing frustrated. He had expected the humans to spend their time desperately searching for a solution. Instead, they seemed to be preparing for something else entirely. "Captain Morrison," he called out, "perhaps we should discuss terms. I am willing to reduce my demands if you show proper respect for our organization." Jake looked at him calmly. "Commander, let me explain something about human history. We've dealt with terrorists before. Pirates, kidnappers, political extremists. We learned that making deals with them only makes the problem worse. Other species in this galaxy are more reasonable," Crixtel replied. "They understand that some compromises must be made to preserve innocent life." "And how has that worked out for them?" Jake asked. "Are they safer now? Are their people free?" The terrorist commander's expression hardened. "They are alive. That is what matters." "Is it?" Jake stepped closer. "Ambassador Vextar, how many times has the Crimson Void made demands of Council species in the past year?" The Zelthani ambassador looked uncomfortable. "The exact number is classified, but it has increased significantly." "And how many times have they kept their promises after getting what they wanted?" Vextar was quiet for a long moment. They usually return with new demands within a few months." Jake turned back to Crixtel. "So you see, Commander, your system doesn't actually protect innocent people. It just makes them permanent victims." The terrorist leader's anger was beginning to show. "Enough philosophy, human. You have 43 hours remaining. Use them wisely." As the deadline approached, strange things began happening throughout the ship. Crew members reported unusual sounds in the walls. The ship's computer systems began running diagnostic checks without being asked. Most importantly, long-range sensors started detecting something at the edge of their scanning range. Dr. Brooks brought his latest findings to Jake during what appeared to be a routine inspection of ship systems. "Captain, those energy signatures I detected? I've identified them. The terrorists are using weapons and equipment purchased from Valdorian suppliers, Syntaxi manufacturers, and at least 2 other Council species." "Legally purchased?" Jake asked. "That's the interesting part. Some of it was bought through legitimate channels. Some of it wasn't. But all of it required government approval to export." Jake understood immediately. Someone in the Council governments is helping them. It looks that way. Either they're selling weapons to terrorists directly, or they're looking the other way while others do it. This information changed everything. The Crimson Void wasn't just a criminal organization operating outside galactic law. They had support from within the legitimate government structure. Amy Harrison approached them with news that changed the situation even more. "Captain, I've been monitoring long-range communications. There are ships approaching our position. Multiple ships. Ours or theirs?" Jake asked. "Both," she replied grimly. "I'm reading human energy signatures, but also signals that match Crimson Void frequencies." Jake looked at his watch. 36 hours remained until the terrorist deadline. The situation was about to become much more complicated. Commander Crixtel seemed to sense that something was changing. He ordered additional guards posted throughout the ship and demanded that all human crew members remain in designated areas. "You seem nervous, Commander," Jake observed. "Cautious," the alien replied. "Humans are proving more unpredictable than other species." "We're just getting started," Jake said quietly. The terrorist leader studied the human captain's face. For the first time since boarding the Liberty, Commander Crixtel began to wonder if he had made a serious mistake. Every other species he had encountered eventually showed signs of breaking under pressure. The humans showed no such signs. Instead, they seemed to be preparing for war. 24 hours before the terrorist deadline, Commander Crixtel made his move. He had grown tired of waiting for the humans to break, and his organization's reputation was at stake. No species had ever refused their demands for this long. "Activate the communication array," he ordered one of his soldiers. "It's time to show these humans the price of their stubbornness." Jake Morrison watched from across the room as the aliens set up their equipment. He had been expecting this moment. Terrorists always escalated when their normal methods failed. The main screen flickered to life, showing a view of space. In the distance, a small blue and green planet hung peacefully among the stars. New Geneva, one of humanity's newest colonies. Beautiful world, Crixtel said with a cold smile. 50,000 humans live there. Farmers mostly. Families with children who dream of better futures. Ambassador Vextar struggled against his guards. You cannot do this. The Galactic Council forbids attacks on civilian populations. The Council forbids many things, Crixtel replied, but they are not here to stop us. 3 dark ships appeared on the screen, moving toward New Geneva. They were sleek and deadly, their weapons already charging for attack. The colony's small defense satellites looked tiny and helpless by comparison. Captain Morrison, Crixtel said, watch carefully. This is what happens when species refuse to be reasonable. The terrorist ships opened fire. Bright beams of energy struck the farming communities below. Buildings exploded, fields burned. People ran in panic as their peaceful world turned into a battlefield. Jake's hands clenched into fists, but his voice remained steady. You're making a mistake, Commander, Amy. Your colonists don't seem to think so. The alien pointed to the screen where human families were fleeing their destroyed homes. Surrender now and I will order my ships to stop. Lisa Campbell stepped forward, her diplomat training keeping her voice calm despite her anger. How many innocent people have you murdered across the galaxy, Commander? How many families destroyed for your politics? As many as necessary, Crixtel replied without emotion. Power requires sacrifice. Usually, other species understand this quickly enough to spare their people. Dr. Brooks had been studying his scanner throughout the attack. He moved closer to Jake and spoke quietly. Captain, those aren't just random strikes, they're targeting specific buildings. Communication centers, power plants, government offices. Jake nodded slightly. The terrorists were not just killing civilians for shock value. They were systematically destroying the colony's ability to defend itself or call for help. Attention, all human crew members, Crixtel announced over the ship's communication system. You are watching the destruction of New Geneva. This is happening because your captain refuses to be reasonable. Port Hope and Freedom Station will follow unless you surrender immediately. The bridge fell silent except for the sounds of destruction coming from the screen. Jake could see the faces of his crew members. They were angry and hurt, but none of them looked ready to surrender. Amy Harrison suddenly looked up from her communication station. Captain, I'm receiving a signal. It's coded. From where? Jake asked. Earth Command, she whispered. Commander, Crixtel was too focused on the destruction of New Geneva to notice the quiet conversation. He was broadcasting the attack to his other ships throughout the galaxy, showing them how easily human resistance could be broken. You see, he said to his soldiers, humans are like all the others. They talk bravely until they watch their people die. But Jake Morrison was not breaking. Instead, he was implementing plans that had been prepared long before the Liberty left Earth, plans that no alien species had ever seen before. Amy, he said quietly, send the authentication code. She nodded and entered a complex sequence into her console. Across human space, military commanders received a simple message. Protocol 7 was now active. Within minutes, every human military vessel, armed merchant ship, and defense platform began moving. Not toward New Geneva, which was already under attack, but toward every known Crimson Void base in operation throughout the galaxy. The response was faster and more coordinated than anything alien civilizations had ever achieved. Human ships that had been spread across dozens of star systems suddenly began converging on terrorist targets with precision timing. Admiral Helen Parker was aboard the UES Retribution when the Protocol 7 message arrived. She had been waiting for this moment, hoping it would never come but prepared for when it did. All ships, this is Admiral Parker, she broadcast to the human fleet. Protocol 7 is now active. You know your targets. You know your orders. Eliminate all terrorist threats. No surrender, no negotiation, no mercy. 20 human warships dropped out of hyperspace and began hunting Crimson Void vessels. Unlike other species' military responses, which typically took weeks to organize, the humans had prepared for this exact scenario. Commander Pete Johnson led the first strike against a terrorist base on the edge of Council Space. His team hit the facility so hard and fast that the defenders never had time to surrender or escape. Back aboard the Liberty, Commander Crixtell was still focused on the destruction of New Geneva when his communication officer brought disturbing news. "Commander, we're receiving emergency signals from our bases throughout the sector. Human ships are attacking our facilities." Crixtell spun around. "What? How many ships?" "Reports are confused, but it appears to be their entire military fleet. They're hitting every target simultaneously." The terrorist leader looked at Jake with new respect and growing fear. "You planned this." "We prepared for this," Jake corrected. "The moment you attacked innocent civilians, you declared war on humanity. Now you get to see how humans fight wars." Dr. Rachel Green, a specialist in alien psychology, was aboard one of the human ships analyzing terrorist communication intercepts. What she discovered changed everything the galaxy thought it knew about human nature. "Admiral Parker," she reported, "the terrorists are completely unprepared for this type of response. Their entire strategy is based on other species' willingness to negotiate rather than accept casualties." The Admiral nodded grimly. "How are they responding?" "Panic, mostly. They've never faced an enemy that was willing to take immediate losses in order to achieve complete victory." On New Geneva, the terrorist attack continued, but something unexpected was happening. The human colonists were not just running and hiding. They were fighting back with whatever weapons they could find. Farm equipment became weapons. Civilians organized into defense groups. Commander Crixtell watched the screen in growing confusion. "Why aren't they surrendering? We've destroyed half their infrastructure." "Because they're human," Jake replied simply. "We don't surrender to murderers." Amy Harrison intercepted more communications from the terrorist fleet. "Captain, they're receiving reports from across the galaxy. Human forces are systematically destroying Crimson Void operations everywhere." The scope of the human response was becoming clear. This was not a rescue mission or a limited military action. This was the complete elimination of a terrorist organization that had operated freely for decades. Admiral Parker's fleet reached the area around New Geneva just as the terrorist ships were preparing for a second wave of attacks. The human warships dropped out of hyperspace with weapons already charged. "This is Admiral Helen Parker of the United Earth Space Force," she broadcast on all frequencies. "To terrorist vessels attacking New Geneva. You have 60 seconds to surrender unconditionally or be destroyed." Commander Crixtell's ships outnumbered the human fleet, but something in the Admiral's voice made his captains nervous. They had never heard such cold certainty from any species military. "Admiral Parker," came the reply from the lead terrorist ship. "We are willing to negotiate. We can discuss terms for withdrawal." "You misunderstood," the Admiral replied. "I said surrender. Unconditionally or be destroyed. Those are your only two options." The terrorist commander tried again. "We can offer to spare the remaining colonists in exchange for safe passage." Admiral Parker's response became legendary throughout the galaxy. "You attacked innocent people. You murdered families. You threatened children. There will be no safe passage. There will be no negotiation. There will be no mercy." The human ships opened fire. Their weapons were not as advanced as some alien technology, but they were used with devastating effectiveness. The terrorist vessels had prepared for negotiation and gradual escalation. They were not prepared for total war. Within minutes, 2 of the 3 terrorist ships were destroyed. The third tried to flee but was caught by human fighters and eliminated before it could escape. Back aboard the Liberty, Commander Crixtell watched his ships die on the screen. For the first time in his career, he was seeing the complete failure of terrorist tactics. "This is impossible," he whispered. "Species don't fight like this. They negotiate, they compromise." Jake Morrison looked at him with cold eyes. "Commander, you're about to learn something that every terrorist in human history eventually learned. When you threaten innocent people, when you murder families, when you use fear as a weapon against civilians, you cross a line that can never be uncrossed." The terrorist leader was beginning to understand that he had made a fundamental miscalculation about human nature. The galaxy's other species avoided total war because the cost was too high. Admiral Helen Parker stood on the bridge of the UES Retribution as her fleet moved toward the Liberty. The terrorist ships around New Geneva were nothing but burning wreckage now, but the real fight was just beginning. Her orders were clear: rescue the hostages and eliminate every member of the Crimson Void organization. "Admiral, we're receiving reports from across the galaxy," said Commander Pete Johnson. "Human forces have engaged terrorist targets in 17 different star systems. So far, we've destroyed 43 Crimson Void facilities." Admiral Parker nodded grimly. "Any word from our people being held hostage?" "Captain Morrison and his crew are still alive. The terrorists are using them as shields, but they haven't hurt anyone yet." Dr. Rachel Green looked up from her analysis station. "Admiral, I've been studying intercepted terrorist communications. They're completely panicking. They've never faced an enemy that was willing to accept casualties to achieve total victory." The Admiral studied the tactical display showing the Liberty surrounded by enemy ships. "What's their psychological state?" "Confusion and fear, Doctor," Green replied. "Their entire strategy depends on other species being afraid to take losses. When humans proved willing to watch New Geneva burn rather than surrender, it broke their understanding of how warfare works." On board the Liberty, Commander Crixtel was receiving increasingly desperate reports from his surviving commanders throughout the galaxy. Human ships were hunting down every Crimson Void operation with relentless efficiency. "Commander," one of his soldiers reported, "we've lost contact with bases in 7 sectors. The humans aren't just attacking our ships, they're destroying our supply lines, our communication networks, everything." Crixtel paced back and forth in front of his prisoners. "This is impossible. No species fights like this. Where is the Galactic Council? Why aren't they demanding that the humans stop?" Ambassador Vextar, still bound but able to speak, provided an answer that chilled the terrorist leader. "The Council sent a message to the human fleet an hour ago. Admiral Parker's response was that they could either help eliminate terrorist threats or stay out of the way." "And what did the Council choose?" Crixtel asked. "They chose to stay out of the way," Vextar replied quietly. Jake Morrison watched the terrorist commander's growing desperation with cold satisfaction. "Commander, you wanted to teach humans about galactic politics. Consider this our first lesson in human politics." "You're destroying everything," Crixtel said. "Decades of work, hundreds of trained operatives, billions of credits worth of equipment. All for what? A few hostages?" Lisa Campbell spoke up from where she stood with the other prisoners. "Not for hostages, Commander. For justice. Your organization has murdered innocent people across dozens of worlds. Today, that ends." Ryan Torres had been quietly observing the terrorist guards throughout the crisis. As head of security, he was always looking for weaknesses and opportunities. The aliens were growing more nervous as reports of their losses came in, and nervous guards made mistakes. Dr. Nathan Brooks continued his analysis of the terrorist equipment, making a disturbing discovery. "Captain, I've been studying their communication logs. The Crimson Void has been planning similar operations against 3 other species seeking council membership." Jake turned to look at the scientist. "What kind of operations?" "Identical to what they tried with us. Hostage situations followed by demands for political submission. They've been systematically controlling who gets to join the Galactic Council." "Commander." Crixtel overheard this conversation and laughed bitterly. "You think you're so clever, humans. Yes, we control galactic politics. Someone has to. The council members are too weak to make hard decisions." "Like what decisions?" Jake asked. "Like keeping dangerous species out of positions of power," the terrorist replied. "Humans are proving exactly why you should never have been considered for council membership." Admiral Parker's voice suddenly came through the ship's communication system. "Commander Crixtel, this is Admiral Helen Parker of the United Earth Space Force. I'm here to discuss your surrender." The terrorist leader activated his communication device. "Admiral, I think you misunderstand the situation. I have hostages, including your captain and a council ambassador. I also have 3 ships. with enough firepower to destroy this vessel. I understand perfectly, Admiral Parker replied. You have 2 minutes to release all hostages and surrender unconditionally. After that, we will board your ship and take them by force. Crixtel looked around at his nervous soldiers. Admiral, if you attack this ship, your people will die. Some of them might, Parker agreed calmly. But all of you will die and your organization will still be completely destroyed. The choice is yours. The terrorist commander tried a different approach. I'm willing to negotiate. We can discuss terms for releasing some hostages in exchange for safe passage. Commander, Admiral Parker's voice carried no emotion at all. Let me explain something about humans that you clearly don't understand. We don't negotiate with terrorists. We don't make deals with murderers. We don't compromise with those who threaten innocent people. We eliminate them. Dr. Rachel Green was monitoring the psychological effects of this conversation on the terrorist crew. Admiral, their stress levels are off the charts. They've never encountered an enemy that was completely unwilling to bargain. Commander Pete Johnson prepared his boarding teams for what would become the most difficult rescue operation in human military history. Unlike most species, humans were willing to accept significant casualties to ensure that no terrorists escaped. Teams Alpha, through Delta, prepare for simultaneous breach, he ordered. Remember, the primary objective is hostage rescue, but the secondary objective is equally important. No terrorist leaves that ship alive. Back on the Liberty, Commander Crixtel was making his final desperate attempt to maintain control. Captain Morrison, convince your admiral to be reasonable. Many species have found ways to coexist with our organization. Jake looked at him with complete disgust. Commander, you still don't understand. Other species might tolerate terrorists because fighting them is difficult. Humans learned something different from our history. Every time you give in to terrorists, they become stronger and bolder. Your colonies will suffer, Crixtel warned. Our colonies are already suffering, Jake replied. You attacked New Geneva. You murdered innocent families. You crossed a line that can never be uncrossed. Amy Harrison, who had been monitoring communication frequencies, suddenly spoke up. Captain, I'm receiving signals from throughout the galaxy. Human forces have eliminated the Crimson Void presence in 12 star systems. They're reporting 0 terrorist survivors. The words hit Commander Crixtel like a physical blow. 0. Survivors meant the humans were not just defeating his organization, they were completely destroying it. No prisoners, no negotiations, no mercy. This is genocide, he whispered. No, said Ambassador Vextar quietly. Genocide is what you did to civilian populations who refused your demands. This is justice. Admiral Parker's voice came through the communication system again. Time's up, Commander. My boarding teams are moving. The sound of cutting tools began echoing through the ship's hull as human Marines breached the terrorist vessel at multiple points. Commander Pete Johnson led the main assault team, while smaller groups moved to secure escape routes and prevent any terrorists from fleeing. The fighting that followed was brutal and efficient. The human Marines moved through the ship room by room, accepting casualties to ensure that every terrorist was eliminated. Unlike other species rescue operations, which typically focused on minimizing losses through negotiation, the humans prioritized complete success, regardless of cost. Ryan Torres managed to free himself and the other hostages during the confusion of the assault. He and his security team immediately joined the fight against their captors, turning the terrorists' numerical advantage into a deadly trap. Commander Crixtel made his last stand in the ship's main engineering section, surrounded by the few loyal soldiers who remained alive. This isn't how galactic warfare works, he shouted as human Marines closed in around him. Commander Pete Johnson, his armor scarred by alien weapons fire, looked at the terrorist leader with cold eyes. Commander, you're right. This isn't how galactic warfare works. This is how human warfare works. The last Crimson Void commander died, still not understanding what had happened to his organization. In less than 24 hours, humans had completely eliminated a terrorist network that had operated freely across the galaxy for decades. As the smoke cleared, Admiral Parker stood in the Liberty's meeting room with Captain Morrison and the rescued hostages. Ambassador Vextar looked around at the human Marines with a mixture of admiration and concern. "Admiral," the alien diplomat said carefully, "your people fight with remarkable effectiveness. But this level of violence, other species in the galaxy may find it disturbing." Admiral Parker removed her helmet and looked directly at the ambassador. "Ambassador Vextar, other species in the galaxy have been living with terrorist threats for decades because they were afraid to pay the price for total victory. Humans are not afraid of that price." 3 weeks after the destruction of the Crimson Void, Captain Jake Morrison stood before the full Galactic Council. The Great Chamber on Harmony Station held representatives from 12 alien species, all of them staring at the human delegation, with a mixture of fear, respect, and uncertainty. Councillor Threshkan of the Valdorian Empire spoke first. His voice carried anger and accusation. "Captain Morrison, your species has committed acts of unprecedented violence throughout Council. Space, you destroyed an entire organization without trial, without negotiation, without mercy." Jake remained calm as he faced the alien council members. "Councillor, the Crimson Void was a terrorist organization that had murdered innocent civilians across dozens of worlds. They attacked our colonies and threatened to kill 50,000 humans. We responded appropriately." "Appropriately?" Threshkan's scaled face showed his disgust. "You eliminated every member of their organization. Not one prisoner was taken. Not one opportunity for rehabilitation was offered." Lisa Campbell, now serving as Earth's primary ambassador to the Council, stepped forward. "Councillor Threshkan, perhaps you can explain why the Galactic Council allowed terrorists to operate freely for decades? Why were they permitted to extort and murder civilians across your territory?" The chamber fell silent. It was a question that no council member wanted to answer publicly. Admiral Helen Parker stood beside the human delegation, still wearing her military uniform. Her presence reminded everyone in the room that human military forces were still active throughout the galaxy, hunting down any remaining criminal organizations. "The Council has always believed in diplomatic solutions," said Councillor Vemtar of the Syntaxi Federation. "Violence should be the last resort, used only when all other options have failed." "And how well did that work?" Admiral Parker asked. Bluntly, "How many innocent people died while you were trying to negotiate with murderers?" Ambassador Vextar rose from his seat. The Zelthani diplomat had become an unexpected ally to humanity after witnessing their rescue operation firsthand. "Honored councillors, I was held hostage by the Crimson Void. I saw their operations from the inside. They were not freedom fighters or political activists. They were criminals who used violence to control galactic politics." Dr. Nathan Brooks had spent the weeks since the crisis analyzing the captured terrorist equipment and communications. His report to the Council contained shocking revelations about corruption within supposedly legitimate governments. "Councillors," Dr. Brooks said as he activated a holographic display, "our analysis of Crimson Void equipment and communications has revealed extensive connections to several council member governments. Weapons were sold to terrorists through official channels. Intelligence was shared that enabled attacks on civilian populations. The display showed financial records, communication logs, and shipping manifests that proved several council species had been directly supporting terrorist operations." Councillor Threshkan stood up angrily. "These accusations are outrageous. The Valdorian Empire has never supported terrorist activities." Dr. Brooks highlighted specific entries in the financial records. "Councillor, these records show that Valdorian weapons manufacturers sold advanced military equipment to Crimson Void operatives using export licenses approved by your government. Those were legitimate business transactions," Threshkan protested. "We cannot be held responsible for how purchasers use our products." Jake Morrison looked directly at the Valdorian councillor. "Councillor, you sold weapons to an organization that you knew was murdering civilians. In human law, that makes you an accessory to terrorism." The chamber erupted in angry voices from multiple species. The humans had not just eliminated a terrorist organization, They had exposed the corruption that allowed it to operate. Commander Pete Johnson, now promoted to general, addressed the council about the broader implications of human military doctrine. Counselors, humanity has established new protocols for dealing with criminal organizations throughout this sector of space. Any group that threatens civilian populations will face immediate and total elimination. You cannot simply execute every criminal in the galaxy, said Counselor Yathara of the Solon Collective. There must be justice, due process, rehabilitation. General Johnson's response was cold and direct. Counselor, we tried to arrest the Crimson Void leadership. They chose to fight rather than surrender. We gave them every opportunity to lay down their weapons. Dr. Rachel Green had spent weeks studying the psychological impact of human actions on other galactic civilizations. Her findings revealed fundamental differences in how species approached conflict resolution. The problem, Dr. Green explained to the Council, is that most galactic species have learned to accept a certain level of criminal activity as inevitable. You negotiate with terrorists because fighting them seems too costly. Humans learned from our history that this approach only makes terrorism stronger. Ambassador Vextar supported the human position with evidence from his own government's files. Dr. Green is correct. My people have records showing that the Crimson Void's demands increased every year. Each time we gave them what they wanted, they returned asking for more. The Council faced a difficult choice. Humanity's methods had been brutally effective, but they violated centuries of galactic tradition that emphasized negotiation and compromise over military action. Counselor Wendell of the Aquarian Reach spoke for the first time during the hearing. Captain Morrison, your people have proven that terrorism can be completely eliminated. But at what cost? How many of your own soldiers died in these operations? Jake's voice showed the weight of command decisions. Counselor, we lost 47. Marines and naval personnel in the operation to destroy the Crimson Void. Each death was a tragedy, but those 47 died to ensure that terrorists could never again threaten innocent families across the galaxy. And you consider this acceptable? Wendell asked. I consider it necessary, Jake replied firmly. Lisa Campbell presented humanity's formal proposal to the Galactic Council. We are requesting full membership in the Council with a special mandate to combat terrorist and criminal organizations that threaten civilian populations. You want us to make you the galaxy's police force? Threshkon said with obvious anger. We want to make sure that what happened to New Geneva never happens again to any world, human or alien, Lisa corrected. Admiral Parker stepped forward with an offer that surprised the entire Council. We are prepared to share our military protocols and training methods with any species that wants to adopt more effective anti-terrorism measures. General Johnson has already established a training academy on Earth. The offer divided the Council. Some species were horrified by human military methods, while others were secretly impressed by their effectiveness. Counselor Zekmore of the Hegemony Coalition had remained silent throughout most of the hearing. When he finally spoke, his words changed everything. Honored counselors, we have been debating human methods while ignoring human results. For the first time in 3 centuries, no terrorist organization is currently operating in Council space. The truth of his statement was undeniable. Human forces had not just eliminated the Crimson Void, they had scared every other criminal organization into hiding or fleeing to distant sectors of the galaxy. Amy Harrison provided the final piece of evidence that convinced the Council. Counselors, we have intercepted communications from 17 different criminal organizations. All of them are avoiding any operations in systems with human presence. The mere threat of human response has become an effective deterrent. The vote on humanity's Council membership was closer than expected. 7 species voted in favor, 4 voted against, and 1 abstained. Humanity was accepted into the Galactic Council, but with the understanding that their role would be different from other members. Captain Morrison, promoted to Admiral, became the first human to serve on the Council's Security Committee. His mandate was simple: ensure that terrorism never again became an accepted part of galactic politics. The human approach began to influence other species. The Aquarian Reach requested human military advisors to help deal with piracy in their territory. The Solon Collective asked for assistance in eliminating slave trading operations. Even the Valdorian Empire, despite Councillor Threshkon's objections, quietly began adopting modified versions of human anti-terrorism protocols. General Pete Johnson's Academy on Earth became the galaxy's premier training center for military and law enforcement personnel. Officers from dozens of species came to learn human methods for dealing with criminal organizations. 1 year after the Crimson Void crisis, Ambassador Lisa Campbell addressed a gathering of newly contacted species seeking council membership. Her message had become famous throughout the galaxy. "The Galactic Council welcomes all peaceful species that wish to join our community," she said. "We believe in diplomacy, cooperation, and mutual understanding. But we also believe that some things cannot be negotiated. The safety of innocent people is not a bargaining chip. The right to live free from fear is not subject to compromise." She paused and looked directly at the alien delegates. "If you choose to join us, you will find humans to be loyal allies and trusted friends. We will share our knowledge, our resources, and our protection freely."